Welcome to Craig's Gun Channel. In this video, we're going to cover the Remington R51. In 1918, Remington produced the Model 51 pistol in .32 and .380 ACP. This pistol was designed by John Peterson specifically for civilian sales in the American market. Its innovative design utilized the barrel as the recoil spring guide, allowing for a shorter overall height than most autoloading pistols of the day, and as it utilized a locked breech design, the slide could be made lighter than those that used a straight blowback approach. These features, combined with superior ergonomics, resulted in a very pointable gun that was marketed as self-aiming. It competed with the Browning design locked breech pistols offered by Colt, as well as the blowback-operated pocket pistols from Europe. The reality, however, was that Americans still preferred revolvers, and for those that did shop for a semi-automatic pistol, the complex trigger and safety mechanisms of the Model 51 made it more expensive than the Colt. To further compound the cost issue, the imports from Europe used the much cheaper to produce blowback operation, making them even much less expensive. Sales were lacking overall, and finally the stock market crash effectively ended its sales run after only around 65,000 were produced. In early 2014, Remington modified the action to utilize 9mm, and the Model 51 was resurrected as the R51. By July of that year, due to a large volume of complaints and performance issues, sales were stopped and were expected to resume in October of that year. Some of the issues were severe and resulted in out-of-battery firings. A general recall was made, and the option to either wait for repair, obtain a refund, or wait for a replacement once new parts were produced was made. For those that waited for repair or replacement, the 3-month wait became 2 years. The pistol had been again slightly redesigned and was re-released as the second model in June of 2016. The R51 is an internal hammer-fired 9mm pistol that utilizes a grip safety and a single-action trigger. It feeds from a single-stack magazine with a capacity of 7 rounds. It's 6.6 inches long, 4.6 inches high, and 1 inch wide. The barrel is 3.4 inches long, and it weighs 22 ounces empty. The magazine release is ambidextrous, and the pistol utilizes a locking breech block action and features a low bore height over axis, which results in lower perceived recoil. Let's take it to the range and see how it does. Oh. And take some more shots with the R51. I noticed earlier it's really hard when you have all 7 rounds loaded in the magazine to actually pull the slide back, so I'm going to go ahead and try it again. I've got 7 rounds in the magazine. That's its capacity, so we'll see what we can do here. It is very difficult to rack that slide back. It gets caught in on the cartridge, so probably some break-in of the magazines would help with that. So we'll see over time. Okay, I've been running just 115 grain ball ammo through it. Got some hollow point. Go ahead and see if it runs through that okay. As noted on the range footage, I found that with a full 7-round magazine, it's very difficult to rack the slide back. This is a complaint I've seen regularly online as well. Overall, I do like the way it shoots. It is very pointable and target acquisition is very easy. I did have one failure to feed, however it ends up that's kind of consistent with every trip I've ever taken with this pistol. I've yet to have a single range outing with this gun that's not had a failure of some type. Due to this, I've classified it as a range gun only. I would not feel comfortable with it as a carry gun, and I could not recommend it as one either. Again, this is consistent with what I've seen others have experienced with this pistol as well. So how about its takedown? Well, let's take a look at that. And as always, before starting, you need to do a quick safety check. Go ahead and take the magazine out. Magazine is empty, and the chamber area is free and clear. So we can go ahead and take a look at the design and controls of the Remington R51. The R51 is a hammer-fired, single-action only pistol. So of course we have the trigger there, have the magazine release there. It is ambidextrous. Either side will release the magazine. You would simply just push down on the button and the magazine will come out. The magazine does have a slide stop shelf, which will engage the slide stop right there on the last round. So when the last round's fired, it will push the lever up, which will lock the slide. To release, you would simply pull down on that lever. It does have a grip safety right here. So for the trigger to work, that would have to be pushed in. The idea behind that is as you would grip the firearm to shoot it, that would hold that in, and then the trigger would function. If that were not pushed in, the trigger is locked and won't function. So this is, as I said, is the slide release. It's also the disassembly catch. You would push in on that side. Once the alignment, there's a little tab on this lever right about there, and you align that with this little cutout in the slide right here. So, first want to make sure that the hammer is in the cocked position. So you'd go ahead and pull the slide back. Then you would line that up with that notch, and then you can pull out the disassembly pin. Now at this point, the knurls on the barrel there, you would grip the barrel by those knurls and then let that spring tension so that you're holding the spring in. Then you can just slide the slide off the frame. And we'll let that go there for a second. Look at that in a second. So take a look at the frame itself. Of course, we have our rails there and there on both sides. This is our ejector. Now it is hinged, so when you're cleaning, you want to make sure you clean all that out real good. There's the hammer. That's the disconnector right there. When the slide goes back, it would push down on that, which would then release the trigger from the hammer so that it's semi-automatic. So you'd want to clean all this stuff off real good, clean out any dirt and grime, give it a coating of oil for corrosion prevention and lubrication. And that's as far as you want to disassemble the frame on this firearm. So we'll go ahead and set that aside. And we'll look at the slide itself. Now what makes the R51 kind of different from pretty much any other pistol that that you really come across or that I've really worked on much, it has a separate locking block. Now the Mauser C96 also has a locking block type operation. However, it operates in a little bit different fashion, obviously, but this is a very old school design, and the intent is so that the recoil would drive the slide back, which would allow this locking block to drop down and disengage itself from where it locks onto the frame. We'll look at that in just a moment. And then that would allow the slide to continue its rearward motion. That little delay as it's unlocking is what allows the pressures to drop to a safe level before it would extract the empty round from the chamber. So we need to remove that locking block first before we can remove the barrel. This is a barrel bushing, and there's the spring. So that same process that we used where you have to grasp those knurls on the barrel is what you would use here. So you would simply push forward, and it is the spring pressure, so it's fairly uncomfortable to do. Take out the locking block, and then the barrel itself, if you see the slide there, it's slightly wider and then it narrows down. You want to get that bushing behind those sections, and then that will hold them in place. It will basically it catches that bushing. And then you can take the barrel out like so. Now to remove the bushing and spring, you'd simply push down and then lift up. So you'd push down and then lift up, and you can remove that. Now that leaves the slide itself. The slide has no other operational parts in it. It's just a solid piece of metal. Of course, it has the sights. Those are separate. They're in dovetails. You have the front dot and the 2 rear dots. It is adjustable for windage. It has a little set screw there. And this is pretty much as far as you can disassemble the slide. So you'd want to clean out the rails on both sides, over here and right there. Clean out all these nooks and crannies and crevices and everything. That little depression right here, that is part of the locking assembly. And if we look at this locking block, it has a little section that lifts up right there, and that actually goes down into that depression, and that's what causes it to lock or unlock. I don't know if you can see this here. When this comes back, it lifts up, and that's it locking and unlocking. So when the slide's in the full forward position, it holds this down tight. So the slide would have to come back slightly, and then that would allow that to unlock, and then that would unlock the slide from the frame. Now this groove is what the extractor rides in. So there's our extractor right there. So this sits like so inside the slide, and that junction right there is what locks it in place. So right now that would be solidly locked. So the recoil would cause the slide to come back just slightly. Once the slide comes back, it lines up with that raised section, and that allows this to then lift, and then that would unlock it so that it could continue to slide backwards and, complete the ejection sequence. The locking block has all the operating components in it. There's our chamber face there. There's the extractor. There's the firing pin. The hammer hits the back of that, and of course that would drive it through to fire the round. This is as far as you really want to disassemble this. The extractor can be removed. You would drive that pin out. The firing pin and its spring can also be removed. You would drive the pin out right there, and it would come out on this side. It's larger on this side than that side, so it is a one direction only. So easy enough to remove. However, there's not really any need to. You just want to go ahead and clean this all off real good and wipe it all down, give it a coating of oil. That's pretty much it. On the barrel itself, we have the feed ramp. And so you want to clean the outside and inside of the barrel, clean the feed ramp. Now these little tabs here, right there, lock into the frame in those little rail sections right there. So the barrel, when it's all assembled, sits in there like so. And it essentially makes it like it's a fixed barrel inside the slide. So the slide and the locking block are all the moving pieces. The barrel basically stays in the same orientation and position attached to the frame during the whole firing sequence, which helps in accuracy. Also, the barrel itself, since it doesn't have to do any pivoting or anything, is lower in its center of axis in the frame than most other pistols that utilize the barrel as part of the locking mechanism. And that helps to reduce felt recoil, because with a lower center of axis, when the firearm fires, it doesn't try to pivot as much, and it makes a more of a push back instead of a lift up. So it's supposed to help with accuracy, and that was one of the selling points of this design when it came out originally. And then, of course, Remington on the remake here, is, you know, still brings up those same points. So that's how all that works. So we'll go ahead and start reassembly. First thing is you want to put the spring and the bushing back into the slide. Now the bushing can only go one way. It's larger on the one side than the other, so the spring can only go in one way. Then you put the spring into the recess where the barrel goes. You're going to push this forward and then down to lock it back onto those sections in the slide, like so. Then you'll get the barrel, put it in the bushing, and then do some manipulation. You can grasp this bushing on this side and through the notch or the opening in the slide to help position that so that you can pull the barrel down. And so that's like that. Now this locking piece has to go into this position here, and you can kind of just push it in place sometimes. So go ahead and push this barrel forward. Now, you have to also line the barrel up with the front. And then once that's done, then that'll go in place. So this is in its unlocked position. If you notice, in relation to the rails, that kind of covers up the rail. So you can't just slide this onto the frame at this point. This locking block has to be pushed down into that position. Of course, you got the spring working against it. So what you need to do, that's where those grooves come into play again, is push this assembly forward, the barrel, grasp those grooves, then line up your rails on your frame, and then you have to hold the extractor and then once that's kind of in place, then you can let go of the barrel, and now it's all in there. So now it's just simply a matter of lining up your locking section again. And one thing I will kind of mention, this little spring here, it is possible, here let me show you this real quick. That spring engages on this little shelf right here. And what the purpose of that is it's to hold this down. So the spring will push down on that section to keep this basically pushed down. Otherwise, it would always be trying to lock the slide. And then the spring in the magazine is stronger than that spring, and then that would push it up when the magazine's empty. It is possible to assemble this to where that spring gets on the wrong side of this. So instead of being up here, it's actually supposed to go right on top of that. It gets underneath it, and then it will try to lock the slide every time you shoot it. So when you go to put this back together, you need to make sure that that spring is oriented the right way. So that's back in shape, in position. Now you'll be able to tell, because if you do that and it locks itself without the magazine in it, you put that in the wrong place. So I'll go ahead and do a function test. Hold the trigger in, pull slide back, let it go forward, make sure you get trigger reset, and we're reassembled. I know that some people have this pistol and will say it's a great gun. I'm happy for them and I'm glad that they have one without issues. But I have to be completely honest with you. This is the worst pistol I have ever taken down. I can honestly say it hurts to work on this gun. Operationally, I found it to not be reliable. It does not offer anything more than what other much more reliable pistols have to offer, and the action, while interesting, appears to be the answer to the question that no one had. Which is a shame, as I really liked the idea and the looks of the gun. I really wanted to like it, and I still do, but more as an interesting example of engineering, not as a serious defensive arm. If your experience has been different, let us know in the comments. I hope that this information has been of value to you, and if you like the video and want to see more like them, please hit the like button and subscribe and hit the notify bell so you get notifications as I release new content. And as always, until next time, stay safe.